Let's talk about 90-day planning and how to create a 90-day plan for your business. Before I walk through the steps, I want to just quickly address why we want to do a 90-day plan or why we want to do a plan at all. And the best way to do that is to give you an analogy. Think about if you were going to build a house or a builder was going to build a house. They just wouldn't rock up to the hardware store, grab some lumber, grab some bricks and a few pipes and start building a house. They would, most certainly have a plan first, so they know where everything's going to go, they know the components they're going to need and how much it's going to cost and how long it's going to take. So obviously a house is a big project. With businesses it's a little bit different sometimes, as we can get into the day-to-day and we just get caught up with reactive things or things coming to us, and we don't always take the time out to be proactive about what we want to do and make sure we're charting the right course for ourselves. So that's why a plan is so important. It gives you a guidance, it gives you a framework on things you need to do, and allows you to be proactive rather than reactive about where you want your business to go. So we're going to talk about two things, stage one and stage two. Obviously, where the whole concept here is to create a 90-day plan. Before we can do that, it's important to understand our longer term goals. Now, if you've already got some longer term goals, this part might not be as important to you. If you've never set goals at all, then this part's very important. I mean, you can't set a 90-day plan that's going to cover the next quarter without knowing, longer time frame where you want to be. Stephen Covey talks about begin with the end in mind, and that's kind of what we're talking about. So long term, you want to think about 3 to 5 years out. What do you want your life to look like? Now, it can be hard to nail that down too specifically, but just get a general idea on what you want your life to look like. How many hours are you working? What sort of things are you doing? What does your income look like? You want to have a picture on what you choose that to be. Then, once you've got an idea of that, and it can be 3, 5, or definitely 1, if you want to look at 1 year goals, you can get pretty specific about that. Then when you can look at, okay, what does my business need to look like in order to service that? To give me the lifestyle I want, what sort of business do I have to create? And then we can start to paint a picture on what that business looks like. How many people you need to have, the number of clients, or the amount of revenue that your business needs to have. All those things can start to give you a picture of the final destination. So then we can start looking at, okay, in order to get there, where do we need to be in the next 90 days? Now, I will mention at this point that goal setting and planning is a skill set. The first time you do it, you might be a little bit confused or not exactly sure how to go about it. Have I done the right thing? Are these the right goals? Are they too big? Are they too small? And that's okay. Don't try and make it perfect the first time you do it. You'll find the more you do this and the more practice you get, the better and the easier it will be. So once we've got an idea on the longer term, we can now look a little shorter term. And it's the other reason behind doing these two different stages, long-term versus short-term, is that in the day-to-day operation of your business, it's very hard to be looking, okay, what have I got to do today and where am I going up there? You'd be doing this the whole time. If we spend a bit of time mapping that out, okay, I can see where I want to be, great, now I can just focus down here. And 90 days is a very easy time frame to get very focused on. It's short-term, it's right here, right now, and we can be pretty precise about it. So the first thing to do, and you've got a workbook there to be working through. So the first part of the workbook is, a place to write down your longer term goals, and then more specifically your 90-day goals of what do you need to achieve in the next 90 days to be on track for your longer term goals. So now, as you set your goals, they need to follow the SMART principle. SMART says that your goal must be specific, measurable, achievable, results oriented with a time frame. The R can also stand for realistic. So there's another video on SMART goals, which you may want to watch if you're not familiar with that. Now, while I've talked about that pretty quickly, I will underline it by saying the goal setting part of your 90-day plan is the most important part. It's the more specific you are on the goals and the clearer they are, the easier it becomes to determine the right strategies and determine the right actions you have to take to achieve your goals. If your goals are a little bit fluffy, like we want to increase our revenue, I mean, how much action do you take around that? Do you invest lots of marketing to do that, or do you do a little bit of marketing? If you said we want to double our revenues in the next 90 days, okay, that's going to take some massive action. We're going to invest some dollars in marketing. Now you can get a clearer picture on what needs to be done. So be very specific about it. So goal setting is number one. Number two is the numbers. Business is all about numbers, and numbers are the language of business. So we have to have a good feel of what our numbers need to look like. So what am I talking about? Well, in your workbook there's 2 pages to look at for your numbers. The first is your 5 ways. And these are your proactive or your critical drivers, if you like, that look at the number of leads you need to generate, conversion rate that you want to attain, average dollar sale, number of transactions per client, and the margin you want to achieve on each sale. So you want to look historically, okay, how did I do in the last quarter or the last 6 months, whatever the relevant time frame is for your business. And then you want to forecast, okay, this is what we did, what do we want to have for the next quarter? So you want to fill that in. Again, the first time you do this, it's going to be a little bit confusing, but it's a skill set. You've got to work on it and you'll become more and more familiar with it. So that's the first party numbers, and then we've got to look at the more traditional numbers, the income statement, the balance sheet, the cash flow. So there's another page here for you to look at these things. And if you've been using the CFO scoreboard software, then you can also use that to do some of your forecasts, or you can simply just do it on the spreadsheet here to say, okay, what have our numbers been quarters previously? What are we going to forecast for the next quarter? So that will be in line with the budget you set for your business and the sales forecast. So in line with that, this is the income statement and the balance sheet. You might also want to, or you should have, your cash flow forecast in place. Saying, the income statement says in theory this is what we're going to invoice and this is what we're going to receive in expenses. The cash flow statement says, what's the actual cash going to be coming in and what's the cash going to be going out. So what's our beginning and ending bank balance going to look like for each period throughout the quarter. So we've got our goals, we've got a good handle on our numbers. Now is the time to start picking our strategies. Now the strategies is what specifically are you going to do to hit your goals? It's sort of where the rubber hits the road. So if you said let's take that double your revenue goal, we want to double our revenue. Okay, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to do a lot of marketing. So we're going to need a marketing plan mapped out very clearly. But your strategy might be develop a marketing plan that we can execute on. You're then going to have to develop the tasks on, okay, well, how do you do that? You're going to have to map out a step-by-step. In your workbook, there's a couple of examples around this. So if you've got, I'll back up for a second, if you've got 1 or 2 goals for the quarter, and I wouldn't advise having any more than that. 1 is the best goal, 2 maybe, 3 rarely. Too many goals, your focus is split too much. So if you've got, let's say you've got 1 goal, you might decide you've got 3 or 4 strategies that you're going to use to hit that goal. Maybe it's a marketing plan, maybe it's in improving your financial mastery and your numbers, maybe it's some sales and initiatives, some sales training, or putting quotas in place. They're all different strategies you might use to achieve your goal. So you're going to fill out one of these strategy pages for each strategy. And all that does is it puts up the top there, you put what goal is it going towards, and then what's the name of the strategy, how are you going to measure if you're on track or not, and then specifically what has to be done for you to be able to execute on that. It's a lot of detail. It might seem like too much work when you first do it. The goal is, at the end of the planning process, for you to have a really thorough understanding of what's required for you to execute on your plan. You don't want to walk into your business on Monday morning and go, okay, so we've got to double our revenue. How are we going to do that? You've got to be very clear on the actions you have to take. And forcing yourself to invest the time in doing this, while it might seem like a lot of work up front, it gives you the clarity to be able to execute. So you've got specific steps, you've got the date by when it has to be done, you've got the who's going to do it, and the cost or any investment you're going to have to make, and the hours. You want to estimate the number of hours. What can happen sometimes is you develop this elaborate plan and these massive goals, but then when you start looking at the time investment to make it happen, you start to realize, hey, we might be kidding ourselves here. So you can scale it back and start to be a little more realistic in what you're going to achieve, and that's an important part. Again, you'll probably find the first time you do this, you'll put more on than you can handle. Then you'll start to learn, okay, let's scale it back and simplify it so we can get it done. So once you've done that, you've got your 1 or 2 goals and you've got maybe 3 or 4 strategies to support each goal and how you're going to get there, and you've mapped out all the specific things that have to happen for each strategy. If you leave that in a workbook like this, that's going to go up on the shelf and it's going to collect dust and you're never going to look at it again. So we've got to put in a format that's going to be usable, something you can look at easily and execute against. That's where we get to the 1-page plan. You're going to take all of that information and condense it down to 1 page. So on this 1-page plan, you should have it there in front of you. You're going to have your goals up the top. You're going to have your strategies listed out just at a high level on what needs to happen to execute. Sorry, what are the strategies to get your goals? And then specifically, you're going to take all that task detail that was under each of the strategies, and you're going to map it out on each week on what I have to do. Now, it can be a good idea to color code these things. So if you've got 4 different strategies up here, put them in different colors so you can then see the different colors for each week as you're going to execute. It just helps keep it in focus and keep it in check. Now, with this one pager, obviously this doesn't go on the shelf and you forget about it. This goes on your desk, it goes on your wall where you can see it. So you can be looking at it each and every day and use it as accountability to keep you on track. The other thing I would highly recommend, I mean, all this planning stuff is really important, but it's really the execution that dictates whether you get the results and achieve the goal. So you've got to make it as, you've got to give yourself the best chances to execute. So things like the one pager, which are a visual reminder, are good. I think it's important to put your goals up on the wall, like in big letters. In my office, I've got a big sort of scoreboard. This is what I'm going for. It's sort of like my one pager, but in a massive whiteboard on the board. Having weekly meetings, getting the whole team involved is really important to give momentum to the whole execution process. The other thing you might want to think about, or is important, is to take those concepts or the tasks you have to do and translate those to your diary so you've plugged in the time allocated to be able to execute. And you might want to look at the video on default diaries to better understand that process. But that's it in concept. Looking at your long term, what do you want your personal life to look like? What does the business have to look like to serve that? Then more specifically in the next quarter, what are our goals? What are the numbers to achieve it? What are the strategies that we have to be able to execute on? What are the tasks that are going to make up those strategies? That, the specific who does what by when. And lastly, transferring that information onto one page so you can keep yourself on track and execute. Have fun with it. Stick with it. It's got to be a habit you do every single quarter. And really, if you're investing half a day every quarter, that's not a lot of time to be proactive about getting you towards your goals. Good luck.